This is a build that if you decided to follow along and do it exactly as I did it, your wife or girlfriend is probably going to leave you. Don't worry about it being expensive, because after we go over all the parts that we used in this build, I'm going to show you guys literally how to do something very similar to this for less than half of what this one is. So I say all that to say this: don't take this video as me telling you to do as I do and build it exactly as I built it. Instead, you should take this video as more of a show and tell for like your own build inspirations that you might be doing in the future, and learning how to do it for a lot less. Which reminds me, I will have a complete list for absolutely every single thing that we're gonna be talking about in today's video. There's the first link in the description. I'll pin it in the comments section. Let's talk about why I built this guy, because there's actually an interesting story behind it. Last October of 2024, the guys over at Brownells asked me and like 3 or 4 other dudes if we wanted to fly out to Iowa to go to the Brownells headquarters and do a dream build series. Decided to go with an AR10 308. Now, I've wanted to do an AR10 308 pistol for a long time, but I kept getting distracted and I just never really got around to it. And I chose to do something very expensive like this because since they're gonna be giving away an exact model, I figured it'd be kind of cool for, you know, whoever wins to have something that's really expensive. Anywho, enough of that crap. Let's get into all the parts that we were using in this, and then we're also gonna talk about, although that this thing is awesome, there is a few regrets that I have and some things that I would do differently knowing what I know now. So before we get into all the parts, let's talk about some of the issues that I had with this build. Number one, the biggest issue that I had when putting all this together was availability of parts. When we did the build, we did it back in November, right before Thanksgiving. And because of the timing, most of the parts that I needed or wanted to use for this build were simply sold out due to Black Friday stuff. So we did a lot with what we had. A good example of that would be with this lower right here. Everything that was in the colors I wanted was out of stock. And so this lower originally was like this. It wasn't OD green, it was kind of like a split pea soup green. And we couldn't find an upper and a lower that matched, so we just went ahead and painted this FDE. And we ran out of time and we just left the upper in black. It's not a huge deal, but that was one of the biggest issues. And the second biggest issue was some of the parts I would have done differently, which you'll see here in a second. So we'll start on the upper and we'll work our way from the front and we will move our way rearward. Right off the bat, we have the forward controls design. This is a Chemo muzzle brake for 30 cal. And one of the biggest reasons that I got this was I wanted something that was Chemo, which I'll explain in a second why I wanted Chemo. And however, the only thing they had was this brake. Now, muzzle brakes are cool, but muzzle brakes are really loud and they let out a lot of concussive forces. I really wanted some kind of good 3-prong flash hider, but unfortunately they were out of stock. However, the reason I wanted Chemo is I like using this Chemo blast forwarding device. I'll have some info about all this stuff over at this list if you want to check it out. I'm not going to thread it on right here because YouTube gets weird about all that stuff. However, this simply can go on and act as a blast shield so that you're not killing everyone around you. And then sometimes with pistols, I know with like 8-inch 223 or 556 pistols, if you have a brake on there, it feels like you're getting kicked in the sinuses sometimes. So we just went ahead and went with this. Now, if this thing proves to be too rowdy at the range, I'm gonna switch it out for this guy right here. This is the Blackout Defense hybrid Chemo, and on the standard ARs, it shoots really flat if you've seen any of my videos that I've made on them. And so if this is too rowdy, I'm simply gonna take it off. I'm gonna put this one on, and this one's also Chemo as well. For the barrel, I originally wanted to go with some kind of like carbon fiber barrel to make it more lightweight because, you know, 308 barrels are very heavy in general, but this was the only 12.5-inch barrel that they had in stock, which is the Ballistic Advantage. I believe this is their government profile basic barrel that they have. It's 4150 chromoly vanadium. That's got a 1 in 10 twist rate, and we have a carbine length gas system on here. So that might be interesting, and it might cause some issues, which we'll discuss in a little bit. We've got a basic non-adjustable gas block on here. Originally, I wanted to put a rifle speed adjustable gas block on here because if you've ever built an AR-10 before, they're not quite as simple as AR-15s, and not in the sense of putting them together. That's always easy, but in the sense of getting them to run correctly. You could put all the pieces together and then the whole thing won't function. So I was really wanting to get one of those rifle speed gas block systems on here so I could adjust it up and down just in case, but unfortunately they didn't have one in stock. So I did a basic gas block with a basic carbine length gas tube. For the handguard, this was another part that was really difficult to find, and they just happened to have one. This is called the Sons of Liberty Gunworks M89 Heavy. Essentially the heavy just means it's for 30 cal ARs. And it is M-LOK on the sides, on the bottom. And then what's interesting about this is I typically like 7-sided M-LOK where you have a lot of M-LOK in the corners. But this one, you know, they did a lot of lightning up in here. But if you look out towards the end over here, you can see that they actually do have M-LOK out on the corners up here, just in case you wanted to put your light on at an angle, depending on the mount that you have. A couple things that I do really like about this thing is, number one, it has the integrated steel inserts for your sling swivel. I like having that on a handguard because then I don't got to go buy one of those M-LOK versions that just simply bolts onto the handguard. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it is something that I like. One of the coolest things about this handguard though is the barrel nut that comes with it. So the barrel nut is actually made out of titanium. And if you notice, it's kind of angled towards the receiver in 3 different locations. And that's because when this slides into place, you have these nuts and bolts over here that simply go through it. And then each screw, as it goes through, is gonna rest right in here. And that way it keeps the handguard pushed towards the receiver, so it won't likely slide off in this direction because, you know, physics is working against it. I will say this though, the biggest downside to this handguard, and just a FYI, is there is no anti-rotation on here. Right here, you'll be able to see a little hole at the top of this receiver. And theoretically, there's a little pin that comes with it, and you should be able to, when you put it on, that little pin is supposed to go into your upper receiver right here to prevent rotation. However, this is what I don't understand about what they did with this at Sons of Liberty. The only upper receivers that the anti-rotation pin will work with is Sons of Liberty Gunworks upper receivers. And the downside to that is you can't get their upper receivers for an AR-10 separately. You have to buy their AR-10s as a complete gun. But you can get the handguard separately, so it literally makes no sense. It would have been so much easier just to put a couple of tabs, you know, that kind of stick off the side to go around the upper receiver to prevent rotation, but they made it kind of unnecessarily convoluted. They could have made it so much simpler. And it's weird too, because if you look at their AR-15 handguards on their M89s, they actually do have little tabs that prevent rotation, but for whatever reason, they decided to go with this, and that's kind of a bummer. So something I wanted to show you real quick though about this attachment system is it is kind of ingenious, you know, and I'm not too worried about anti-rotation because it uses these nuts right here. So if you notice, one side you got the nut, one side you got the screw. You'll notice there's this little wedge right here, like a bevel. And essentially, that little bevel, when it goes into your handguard, it's gonna press up against the barrel nut. And when you tighten this down, it sucks it in really tight. And honestly, even though this has no anti-rotation on it, it was a bear to get this off. I had to actually get a hammer and whack at this hand stop up here, and it took quite a few good whacks to get this thing to break free. So although they didn't include, you know, any anti-rotation capabilities, I'm pretty sure that this thing is going to tighten down enough. I don't know what the torque specs are, but they're in like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 foot-pounds or something like that. Just can't think of it right now. Going back to the upper right here, we'll go over all the attachments and the optics later. For the upper receiver, we're using an Aero Precision basic upper receiver. And then that is going to be matched to the basic Aero Precision M5 lower receiver. As I mentioned, this was originally some kind of split pea soup green. We actually painted this at the filming studio using Brownell's Alumahide. and it didn't actually come out in the color that I really wanted. I wanted a color that was more similar to the stock, more of a coyote tan, and this one kind of came out more washed out. I might have this re-Cerakoted later, just because when you look at the brace here, and then you look at the light, these are more of a coyote. And when you look at this hand stop, as I mentioned, we'll go over all the accessories later, but those are all kind of a coyote. And then the grip and the lower receiver are not. For the trigger, we do have a Geisley Super Duty. Yeah, this wasn't the trigger I wanted. This is a 2-stage trigger. I wanted a single stage, but it was all they had. I typically really prefer the Super Duty SD3G triggers. They're single stage, they're really light, and I love them to death. But this one is, I believe, the SD Combat 2-stage. It's not a big deal, but you know, like I said, when you want to do like a dream build, you try to get all the parts that you want. For the lower parts kits, basic lower parts kit, takedown pins, stuff like that. For the safety selector, we are using the Radian 4590 ambidextrous safety selector. One of my favorite safety selectors ever. I put it on almost every single build that I have. For the grip, we're using the Difrico grips. These are very vertical. I like that because my wrists seem to get really tweaked on AR-15s if the length of pull isn't long enough, especially with braces. And then this has something called the grip plug, which is a battery holder. But more importantly than that, they have like a bobtail on the rear of these grips. And I noticed that like, it just feels a little odd right here on my hand. And I don't like it that much because it just doesn't inspire confidence when I grip it. So my main reason for getting the grip plug isn't just for batteries, but when you have the grip plug in place, it lengthens the grip on the backside and it feels so much better. Moving back, we are using the Law Tactical folder. This is actually the first time I've ever used the Law Tactical folder. I have tried folding adapters in the past, but they were always Law Tactical copies. I like folding adapters and folding ARs and stuff like that. They're not the most important thing that I need to put on a gun, but since they were saying, hey, you can do whatever build you want, I was like, let's throw the kitchen sink at it. So I went with that. For my buffer tube, we are using the Primary Weapon Systems fluted and numbered buffer tube. I like this buffer tube on a lot of guns. And then it also uses their like ratcheting system as well as their end plate that has a QD sling swivel right there. As you can see, the brace, we are using the SB Tactical SBA4 brace. The original brace that we put together in the shop was black, but I didn't want black, I wanted coyote. And so I just took this off another gun that I have to throw it on here. And then I put the black one on a different gun. For the bolt carrier group, for those of you that have watched my videos, a lot of you guys know that I like really good bolt carrier groups that have really good specs. They didn't have the bolt carrier group that I wanted. However, this one is the Brownells bolt carrier group. It's a nitrided bolt carrier group. It's got a 9310 bolt. It's heat treated, shot peened, and magnetic particle inspected. I don't believe it's high pressure tested. It doesn't say so on their website at least. And lately, I've been trying to move away from 9310 nitrided bolt carrier groups. And the reason that I've been trying to move away from them is the heat treating temperatures are very similar to the nitriding temperatures. And so, for example, typically in manufacturing, they're gonna heat treat it first and then they're gonna nitride it. Now, the temperatures are far enough away that if there's good quality control, it won't be an issue. But if they don't regulate the temperature of the nitriding, it could get too hot and it could undo all of the heat treating of the bolt. You know, I've never had an issue. It's just a theoretical thing, but I've been just trying like to get away from 9310 on nitride. So if I was gonna get a nitrided bolt carrier group, I would like it to be Carpenter 158 steel because the temperatures for heat treating versus nitriding are a little bit further away. So just a heads up on that. However, we'll see how it performs. It might perform just fine and none of my concerns will be valid. Who knows, guys? I'm just here to have fun and see what happens. For the charging handle, I'm using the Radian Raptor LT. This one is designed for AR-10s. I love them to death. This one might be a little small and I'll show you why when I get it all put together, but I might need something that's a little bit wider. I picked up the Lancer L7 magazine. This is like the FDE translucent mag. I've been using these a ton over the past 2 years or so on all of my ARs and I'm loving them to death. The downside to the AR10 versions is they're not cheap. They're kind of pricey for what they are. I'm gonna be using that, but I also have a couple PMags as well laying around. Now let's get into the attachments. That way you guys can see everything. So let's start up here. For my light, I am using the Cloud Defensive Rain Micro. One of the reasons why I wanted to try this light in particular is you get a ton for the money. And the reason I say that you get a lot for your money is a while back, I did a build and I got the Surefire Mini Scout, and this thing was like 350, something like that. And I like the fact that it came with, you know, the attachments and everything, but it didn't come with any switches and you had to buy that separately. And what's interesting about that is the Cloud Rain Micro is literally the same price and you get a ton more. So that's why I was excited to test this out. Essentially, this is called dual fuel capabilities, meaning you can either use it with an 18350 or a CR123A battery. That way, if you want to use rechargeable batteries, you can, and if you want to use non-rechargeables, you also can. It's IPX8 waterproof, fully submersible, up to 100 feet for 24 hours, so it's definitely really rugged. Peak intensity is 95,000 candela, and then about 1,000-ish lumens or so with the 18350, and it has a 40-minute runtime with the 18350 as well. It also included the M-LOK mount that goes on right here, and we got the pressure switch up here as well. Downside to the pressure switch, there is no momentary. If you want momentary, you have to reach out with your thumb and push it barely and then let go. If you push too hard, it stays on. This switch in particular doesn't have momentary on it. But when you look at the difference between that Surefire Scout Mini I showed you and then this one, and knowing that they're the same price, it's a big deal. And by the way, over at the parts list, I know where these can be had for like 90-ish doll hairs off. So that'll be over at the parts list if you want to check it out. For my hand stop right here, this is the JMac HRD hand stop. And these are actually really hard to find in stock, and I was surprised they had it, especially in this color. But I wanted something that was unintrusive, lightweight, but would also hold my hand in place. So we went with that guy right there. For the red dot, we're using the EOTech EXPS30 in FDE tan. Underneath it, we are using the Unity riser because we also have the Unity FTC 4X magnifier. And this isn't just a mount. This is an actual integrated magnifier. And I got a bone to pick about this because I'm gonna have to send it back to Unity. But essentially, if you see right in here, this is like a, I don't wanna take it off yet because there's a lot going on. So if you look right here, this little piece right here is supposed to be like a pressure lock. It's a quick detach, so when you put it on, that part pops out with a spring. You can see it moving. See it moving right there? So that spring pressure is supposed to keep this thing locked. However, if I push right over here, it still opens up. And so the lock isn't working. When I was putting this on and I had this part folded out right here, this thing actually flew apart on me and I almost lost the spring, and it's not supposed to come apart like that. And so I've already emailed the people at Unity. They want me to send it back to them, but I was like, I gotta finish my video. One thing I will notice about this, one thing I hate about magnifiers in general is magnifiers have the worst eye relief in the world. And this one actually has pretty decent eye relief. I don't know exactly what the measurements are, but I have a couple of other magnifiers, including an EOTech. I think it's a G45 that I have. And this has better eye relief than that. So I am excited to see how it feels to shoot it at the actual range. So here she is, all put back together and torqued down to spec. I wanted to put everything together so you could see what it looks like, but it definitely looks dead sexy. Now you might be wondering two things. Number one, how much does this thing even weigh? I mean, it's only 12.5-inch AR pistol, but being AR10, it can make it weigh a lot more. And the second thing you're probably wondering that I want to cover is some things that I'm potentially worried about when I take this to the range. So that's the parts we use. Now, I have not had a chance to actually take this out to the range and test it yet, even though it's been almost 8 or 9 months since we built it. It just arrived the other day. And so I haven't had a chance to take it out yet, but we will be doing a follow-up video with live fire on this guy just to see how it performs. Now, how much does this thing actually weigh? Well, with all the parts and the external muzzle devices, the empty mag and everything on it, it comes out to about 11 pounds and 12 ounces. So almost 12 pounds for this hog right here. And honestly, AR10s are really heavy to begin with because of the barrels and the barrel nuts, and everything's just larger on it. The bolt carriers are huge in comparison to a standard AR-15, but that's the weight of it. Who knows? Now, I mentioned that we were going to talk about some things that kind of concern me about this. Now, I've only built 1 or 2 AR-10s in the past, and of those 2 that we built, they always had some kind of issue when you actually go out to the range and start shooting it, and it's usually some kind of gassing issue. And so that's the one thing that worries me about this is when we take it out, are we gonna have issues with the gassing? Am I gonna have to play with the buffer system or something like that to get this thing going? The second thing that kind of concerns me about it is the muzzle brake on it. Like I mentioned when we were talking about the parts, I'm not the biggest fan of muzzle brakes, especially on shorter barrels, just because of all the concussive forces that will come back to you. And it feels like you're getting kicked in the sinuses. So we'll see how that goes. But worst case scenario, we have this. And then if it's too bad, we'll switch it out for that Blackout Defense 30 cal muzzle device. But now here is the most important thing. Number one, I did talk about this thing is so expensive that it would make your wife want to leave you. Well, how much does something like this kind of cost? And how do you do it for cheaper? Well, number one, without any of the external attachments like the lights, the external muzzle devices, the optics, this thing comes out to like $2,200. And with the attachments, it comes out to $4,500, which means we have more money and attachments on this thing than we actually have in the build itself, which is kind of crazy, right? Like nobody in their right mind would actually build something like this. And to be honest with you, if I were gonna do this with my own money, I wouldn't do it like this, and I would do it for a lot cheaper, and let me show you how. So I was going through this and I was trying to figure out, okay, where are some places where we could save some money if I wanted to do this build again? Now, not including optics and stuff like that, because obviously you could change out the optics, that's the obvious. I'm talking about the bare bones of this build. Well, number one, this handguard, as I showed you up close, I showed you it has the reinforced steel inserts for the sling. It has a titanium barrel nut, but aside from that, this handguard really isn't that special. Well, this handguard is $380 to $400. That's crazy. Like, I'm sorry, but there's not really a handguard that is really worth that much money to me. I don't know what Sons of Liberty is thinking, but that's really expensive. But the problem that I was running into, and the problem that I'm running into even now, is it's really difficult to find an AR10 handguard that has all the features that I want in the 11.5 to 10.5 inch length. And honestly, the only other ones that I can find that are even comparable are like from SLR Rifle Works, and those are literally almost the same price as this one. And they don't have steel reinforced QD sling points. So there's not much you can do about the handguard. However, you could skip out on getting a hand stop. I mean, I think it was like 50. You could just use the grip that comes with the lower parts kit. You could totally skip getting this upgraded, buffer and ratcheting system and just go with like a basic carbine buffer kit for an AR-10. That'd save a lot of money. Another big one is you could totally skip using a folding adapter in general and just not use one. You could also not go with the forward controls design muzzle device. You could just go with a standard A2 flash hider, or if you wanted something a little more upgraded, I'll have some stuff over at the parts list, but I think Firearms makes a brake that's really comparable, and it's literally half the price of this thing. It just doesn't have chemo and stuff. You could totally skip out on the Geisley Super Duty 3-gun trigger, and you could opt for like something like a LaRue trigger, which are a heck of a lot cheaper, or you could even go with the Hyperfire enhanced duty triggers. I really think that those are heavily slept on. Not enough people realize how good that those, $99 doll hair triggers are, but they're amazing. I'll have some info at this about them. You could also skip on the Radian charging handle. This thing right here for the AR-10 version is like $110. Man, I've never seen a charging handle that expensive, because their standard AR charging handles can be had for like $60. So I don't understand why it's almost nearly double the price. I know it's bigger, but dang, come on, dude. You could also skip out on the 4590 Radian safety selector and just use the mil-spec one that is included in the lower parts kits. So you can make all of those sacrifices to your build. However, here's the problem. So I went through and added all that stuff to my cart, making the the appropriate sacrifices to try to make this build a heck of a lot cheaper. And it literally only brings the price down to about $1,600, down from about $2,200. So it's about 600 bucks cheaper, but the problem is you make a lot of sacrifices for that 600 bucks. So then I got to thinking, and what if I told you that you could literally do something very similar to this for about $1,250 to $1,300-ish. And you would get a 12.5-inch 416R stainless steel barrel. You would get a different brand, but you would get a 10.5-inch M-LOK handguard that also has the steel reinforced quick detach points. You'd still get the Radian charging handle and the Radian safety. You would get a B5 Systems grip. You'd still get the SBA4 brace. You would get a 3-prong flash hider. It also includes a upgraded hard chrome bolt carrier group. You'd get a decent mil-spec plus trigger. It would also include one Lancer L7 mag. In addition to all that, it even includes the rifle speed adjustable gas block that is also cross-drilled and pinned into the barrel. So you're probably wondering to yourself, what are you talking about? How the heck do I do that? Well, that would be the PSA Saber AR10 pistol. Now, I have one of their rifles. This is a full 16-inch rifle, but they make this in a 12.5-inch pistol as well. And I'm gonna get one so we can do a comparison between this build and the Saber in the near future and do a video on that. But literally, those come in, I think if you get the black one, they're like $1,250. Or if you get the one that's kind of colored like this one, they're about $1,300. I'll have some info over at the playlist so you can check it out. However, don't take this as me saying these are good to go. I literally just got this one as well. Haven't had a chance to take it to the range. With that said, I do have a complete video that I'll put up right up here in the corner where I've done a deep dive on PSA Sabers. And I'll be honest, I have a couple of their AR-15s and they are literally some of the best that I've personally tested that you can get for the money because of all the upgraded parts and features that they include. So I highly suggest that you go ahead and check out that video, but let me know what your questions are down in the comments section down below. But until next time, I love you and you guys stay sexy.